What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to another episode of Killer Content. So usually it's me, Nerdy Dustin, and my co-host Noah Drake Bell, but Noah is currently in Los Angeles doing all the fun stuff. So since this week's movie is Nightmare on Elm Street 5, The Dream Child, who better to have co-host this week than Amanda Kruger herself, Beatrice Boepple. Beatrice, thank you so much for being here. How are you doing today?
I'm actually doing really, really well. Thank you for asking. I those of you who know me and follow anything, I just had back surgery recently, 5 weeks ago. So major. Like I got like rods and screws and all kinds of hardware in my back. So I'm kind of a bionic woman. But that's 5 weeks ago, and I just got cleared to be able to drive again and take baths. So I'm very happy. I'm in a good mood.
Oh, that's awesome. So you're recovering well then. That's good. That's good. Awesome. All right, y'all. You know how we do it here. First thing we do is talk about what we like about the movie. But I figured this is a very special week on Killer Content. So instead of talking about what we like about the movie, since we have Amanda Kruger herself here, let's talk about this. Beatrice, what was it like being on and in this movie? What was set life like?
That life was amazing. I mean, I compared to anything I've ever done, the gothic sets on this were just remarkable. Really, they would suck you in and pull you in, especially my scenes. I mean, my scenes were the church, the creepy church, with all the light streaming in and the dust and the pigeons flying around. Then also the tower room, which was similar, kind of very dusty and creepy and gothic and dark. And then the main that Escher staircase funky thing, at the end coming down and then of course the birth scene too, which was also dark and creepy. So every set I was on was really dark, really filled with mood and atmosphere, and you could just feel it. Like, I don't know, so often, when I'm filming, whether it's film or TV, you're very aware that the set like ends right where the camera stops. So, it can look really real between these, but the second you look over here, there's a lamp, and over here's wires and all kinds of stuff. But this was a whole warehouse. So they would like really fill the room. So you actually felt it was almost like being on a, play on a theater set where the whole thing, as far as you can see, is what the scene is supposed to be. So you didn't really, as an actor, you didn't have to use your imagination for the setting, the way you sometimes do with other stuff. I mean, I think most actors agree, when you're in character, you don't notice the lights and the stuff, but this made it very, very easy. So I loved the sets. Fantastic set designs for sure. And the lighting and the mood.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll talk about what I like. One of the things I love about this movie is the sets and the practical effects. I mean, it's like they took it to a whole nother level with this. And then I love the blue tint that they use. I don't know, this might actually be the first horror movie where they used the blue tint color filter. I'd have to look that up, but yes, I love the way this movie looks. So now for the audience that may not know, most times movies and television shows are actually filmed out of order. So my question for you is, since you're in the beginning of the movie and the end of the movie, and you're kind of sprinkled throughout, how'd you guys shoot your scenes? Was it did you like film all your stuff all at once, or was it spread out?
Oh, it was spread out. I don't think, I'm trying to think over I would come back, because what they generally had, they had all the different sets going on at the same time. But I think it was pretty much chronological, because I do believe the birth scene, I think the birth scene was the first one we filmed. Well, I mean, that I filmed. And then I think it did go on to the church, and then the Escher. So I think, yeah, in this one we did actually shoot in chronological order, at least my scenes. I can't attest for the rest of the cast, but aside from the blue light, I know you said you want to do it differently this time, but do talk about what you loved. I think I loved that lady who played the nun, Freddy's mom. I loved her. She was freaking amazing. Truly, like, so believable. Didn't you love her?
Yes, that I did. I do love your performance in this. Uh you're like you're kind of like a superhero in this movie.
Right?
You are protecting the cast throughout the movie. Yeah, yeah, I'll give you that.
And I think it's pretty cool that Freddie is scared of me. Like I'm his mommy. Like you can tell he's totally scared of her. Like she's the one character in the world that he actually is fearful of, I think. So I think that's kind of cool. Everyone's scared of their mom. Um, so that's kind of fun. And then yeah, at the end, well, it's funny because now that Wit, who plays Jacob, the dream child, he's doing the circuit with me. He's been doing a lot of the conventions and stuff. And whenever we've had interviews together, he always is claiming that his character, the little guy, was the one that destroys Freddy at the end. And I'm like, dude, no, I do. It's a combination. Like we work together, and then I pull him into me, and I throw us into the room with the Hunter Maniacs, and he goes, "Nah, nah, nah, it's me. I do all the work." I'm like, "Stop it, dude." Anyway, but we can let the fans decide, isn't it? Freddy's mom. I mean, ultimately, at the end, who is it that takes him inside and throws us? And the fact that his arm comes ripping out of me, that's beside the point. But you know,
Yeah, speaking of him being afraid, well, there's one scene in this movie too where he literally is running towards Alice and them, and he stops and he shuts the door. So it literally, that's the first time you really realize that, wow, Freddy is actually afraid of Amanda. So yeah, that's a very iconic moment in the movie.
yeah,
Um,
so exciting. It's fun to yeah, it's fun to be that, and it's just crazy to think that I'm his mom. I was thinking about this the other. I turned 60 this year in February. I turned 60, and so I'm actually now the age that dead Amanda would have been, which is why they had Nan Martin, rest in peace, when she played Amanda Krueger the first time. That was an accurate age, for the ghost of Amanda. If she died when she supposedly died, whereas I was, much closer to the age of somebody that would have given birth. Although even then I was a little young. I was like in my late 20s when I was playing that. I think I was like 27 or something. And by calculation, Amanda would have been about 34. It's in my book. I've written it, so I did all the research. But anyway, I think she's about 34 when she gives birth to Freddy. So I was a little on the young side, but clearly Nan Martin couldn't have played that. That would have been ridiculous. A 60-year-old giving birth, she couldn't have. So between the two of us, it kind of worked out. But now I'm actually that age. So if they did do a remake, I could play it.
I would love for them to do a good remake. I'm not a fan of the remake they did attempt to make. It wasn't good. Um,
And to that point, my book would maybe, I don't know. Should I plug that right now or
oh
wait till
heck yeah, go ahead. Yeah, for sure.
again, people who know me, some of my fans know that I've written a book. It's called The Kruger's Curse: Nightmare Before Elm Street, and this is that I'm using this for the cover art. Anyway, but it's basically told from Amanda's perspective. It's the mother's perspective, and it begins before Freddy was born, and actually it begins before Amanda Krueger was born. It gives the history of this curse. The Krueger's family was kind of cursed. There was a lot of terrible things that befell the family. The what audiences know obviously is Amanda was raped. She's a nun. We don't know why she's a nun. That doesn't necessarily have to be a curse, but something drove her to be a nun. We also know that she had to give up Freddy, so that is a kind of a bad thing for both Freddy and for Amanda. And we know that Freddy's life continued to be pretty cursed. He was taunted by all the kids. He had that creepy dad beating him and stuff. And so we all kind of have a general idea of what Freddy's background is, from the later films, but it's not really fleshed out. So obviously a prequel would flesh it out. So does my book. So my book kind of goes into the whole background of it, as told by Amanda from her perspective. So she knows in retrospect, because she is dead, she is a ghost now. It's kind of an interesting way of telling the story, because she tells it in, from her memory and from what's going on. But there are some things that she doesn't know. Like, for example, she only knows what the news knows about how Freddy's stepfather dies. So, like, so when she's talking about it, she won't say that he killed her. That Freddy killed him. She says that the news said that Freddy's stepfather must have fallen on something because he had these, scrape marks through him and everything. But it's a fun story that I keep true to every fact and detail they give in the movies, in all 8 movies. The only things that sort of differ are I do try to clean up the date line. Everyone has Freddy's birth wrong because, it's all agreed that she was locked in the asylum at Christmas in 1941. So, and then people give these weird birth dates like May and such. And no, so December to January, January to February, February, March, April, May to June, July to August, August to September. So, 9 months would be September. So I kind of clean things up like that, like make it more realistic that he's 9 months, he's born 9 months. And there are just a few dates that just don't jive between all the movies. And, where there's inconsistencies in the film, I try to make it, I take my best stab at it. And then the rest of it, I just fill in all the unfilled in things with Amanda's version, which, I had a lot of facts in my mind. As soon as I was cast as Amanda, I think, as an actor, like, when you're cast in a role, whether it's for theater or for a film, the first time you're seen on stage or on film in front of the camera, you come from somewhere. So as an actor, you have to you prepare it. Like, the script doesn't necessarily say, it just says, interior living room or whatever, but you as the actor have to know, where was I before I came into that living room? And what is my relationship to these people? And what kind of history do I have? And if I'm in love with somebody, did I have a nice, boyfriend before? Was it evil? We do all this character development. It's part of what we do to bring these characters to life. So of course, playing Amanda Krueger, I only had the tiny little hints in the script, doesn't really give me much. Plus I hadn't at that time seen the older ones except for Elm Street 1. So I made up her history. And this kind of, it flushes it out to also jive with what the history that's in the films. So I think it would be an exciting thing for any fan to read. Anyone who loves Elm Street, will absolutely every fan love it? Maybe not, if people have their own history. And it does, I don't sweeten Freddy in any way, but I do, flush out a little bit more of why he became the way he became. Which is hinted at with the teasing and the beating and stuff like that. And I do flesh that out. Like, he didn't start off as a baby all evil per se. There's reasons for how he turned out, but I even flesh out why the stepdad, Alice Cooper's character, why he turned out the way he did, why Amanda turned out the way she did, so it's kind of a fun study. Plus I got, there's 16 illustrations throughout the book. It's not a graphic novel, but I got 3 different artists. One is a comic artist for DC Comics and Marvel. He did all the Venom comics and stuff. He's done a bunch of the illustrations. And then the artist who did this, which actually really inspired the book, he did the bulk of the illustrations. And then I had another artist do Freddy's sweater, which you can guess who made that sweater for him. But anyway, so yeah, and I think in particular it's a book that fans will love because there's a lot of things sort of hinted at that, that a fan would go, oh, like, for example, when one of Freddy's most pleasant memories when he was a baby with his mom, because he goes in and out of the orphanage, which you'll find out in the book. But there's one time when they actually Amanda and him are together. She visits from the nunnery, which helps run the orphanage where he's at, and they start skipping rope. And they're jumping rope, and he's a baby, she's holding him, and it's the first time he really laughs, and the kids are singing this little, they're not doing 1, 2, but they're doing what's that one that we all jump rope to, but it's very similar. So it's just kind of like an homage to that, like why do those girls always appear with a skip rope and stuff like that? And it was one of his fond memories. So anyway, there's a lot of fun things in there that Elm Street fans will totally get.
I absolutely love that idea. And what I think I love the most about your book is it's a book being written by the actress who played Amanda Krueger. So like that is even That's beyond cool. Y'all, I'm excited for this book. I cannot wait to read it. I can't wait to see the art. Um, and I love how you're paying homage to little things like that. Like, yeah, the girls skipping rope and the song, and um, I would love everything I just heard. I would love to see that be a movie. I really would. Um, oh man, that's too cool. Do you have a date for everyone that we can expect to read this?
I'm hoping to have it before August of this year because August is I'm doing Phantasm. My spine should be healed enough that I can start doing conventions again. So the first one I'm doing is Phantasm in Orlando. Um, that's in August, and then I'm also doing. Has they announced it? Am I allowed to announce it? I don't care. I'm going to announce it. Creature Feature in Gettysburg. That's also at the end of August. Mark Patton will be there. Who else from Elm Street is at that one? Can't remember. And then I'm doing this one, a bunch of us, almost the entire five cast, and plus Mark and Kim. I think actually a bunch of different Elm Street from a lot of different numbers of Elm Street are going to be in England at the Hampshire HorrorCon.
Oh,
So
that's so cool.
who's going to be going out to England? That's this fall or this November. And then I'm also doing something in Massachusetts, Monster Expo. That's going to be Mark Patton and myself, and I think Erica Haskell. So, right. So we all know Greta, who's so back to number five. That's my most gruesome kill. Like that's Greta's death. I think is the one reason I wouldn't let my kids watch Elm Street for the longest time, and because of that one scene. Like the rest of it, I would have been okay with, but feeding her stomach to herself, I was like, oh, I don't want to put that image in my kids' mind when they were too little.
Yeah, that kill gets me. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
uh, um
Your favorite kill of those ones of the number five?
what's my favorite kill? Uh oh wow.
Of Dream.
Probably oh what's his name? Is it Dan? The guy that's on the motorcycle. When the motorcycle literally well, Freddy becomes the motorcycle and then starts incorporating him into the bike is probably my favorite kill. Now I do like I can't remember that guy's name off the top of my head. The comic book.
The actor is Joe Seeley, but he plays Mark Gray.
Mark, yeah. His kill is very unique to the entire franchise, just because he becomes paper and he kills him just by chopping up the paper. It's also probably the least gruesome kill in all of the Freddy Krueger franchise.
I'm gonna talking about another franchise in our story.
A Freudian slip, y'all. No, those are my favorite two kills in this one. Greta's though, yeah, that's hard to watch. Now, it wouldn't be killer content if we didn't talk about what we don't like about a movie. But honestly, there's not actually a whole lot I don't like about this movie. And I'm not just saying that because Beatrice is here, but one of the things I actually don't like about this movie is how dark it is. Which is weird to say because it's like, well, it's a Freddy the Krueger movie. It's going to be dark, but this movie is the darkest in the franchise. Now, a question for you is, when you have to film those rape scenes, what was that like on set? Like, what were those days like?
Well, this is so interesting because I think pretty much every interview I've ever done, if they mention the rape scene, they talk about it. And I'm like, dudes, are you not watching it carefully? Because if you watch it carefully, I don't even appear in it. It's Alice.
That's true. That is not you.
Everyone forgets that. Everyone forgets it because that's the whole point, right? So Alice does rape, but it's actually Alice. Like, so Lisa Wilcox, the actress, so she's in there and she's seeing all the, the rapey thing about to happen. And then she looks down and she sees the name tag and she's like, Amanda Krueger, what? And that was the whole thing. So yeah, a lot of people have asked like, what was that like filming? I'm like, dudes, I wasn't in that scene actually.
That's right, because you don't, because like she's in the bed and then it flops where she's in front of the bed and she's watching you give birth. That's right. That's right. Yeah.
So that's the whole thing. Like so in that the whole sequence is she's getting drawn in to see the history through Amanda Kruger's eyes. So she, yeah, so she's on the gurney and she's like, what the heck, and she's about to give birth, and then it flips around and it's her looking down, and that's when we see it's actually Amanda. So yeah, so that's actually interesting. The rape scene and everything, going back to the book, is in the book. And because uh, just for fans to know, what my book will do is it takes you all the way from the history of the Kruger family all the way through what would be the beginning of Nightmare on Elm Street, because it takes you all the way up to some of the scenes you'll know because of the flashbacks we see in number 6 and so forth, of him being married, of him having his daughter, of him killing his wife, Freddie killing his wife and all that. That's all in the book because that happened while Amanda was alive. And after when Freddy Krueger himself is burned by the parents, that's when Amanda Krueger hides herself away in the tower and some people say she hung herself. She didn't. Obviously, you can see she didn't. You see in 5 that she just locked herself away and starved to death. And it's because she was a nun, and to commit suicide is a sin. However, she didn't want to live, so she kind of did this technicality of locking herself away so she'd starve to death. And in a sense, it's like, okay, well, I'm not really killing myself, because if God wanted me to live, I guess he could make me live. So she just sat there until she actually died. Her body died. But anyway, so the film takes us all the way up to when she dies and he dies, which is technically then Nightmare on Elm Street 1. He's already dead, right? He comes back and starts doing his kills. I kind of jumped out of your question. Where were we? We're talking about the rape.
Well, no, it doesn't matter now because it just hit me that you're not in those scenes, but you are in the birth scene. How was that scene?
Yeah, that was wild. That was really wild. I mean, it's funny because if I had done that scene having had actually given birth, my first birth with my first son was horrendous. It was 76 hours of labor. It was hard. I was screaming and everything. So I did a good job given the fact that I hadn't given birth when I had done the scene. But I just imagined unbelievable pain and fear and something that's important to remember. For anyone who's watched number 5, is because most of this, whether you want to call it a dream sequence, it is, and it's also a reliving, because Amanda says, you brought me back to give you life, so the whole thing is Freddie in number 5, he comes back through reliving his birth scene. That's how he rebirths himself. So is it real? Is it fake? Who knows, really? The directors didn't really even know. Stephen Hopkins was like, I said, do I play her? Like, is she dead? Is she a ghost? Or, he's like, well, yes and no, not really. It's the same as what Freddy is. Is he a ghost? Not really. He's this dream demon. So in that way, I guess I'm a dream nun. Woo-hoo! I'm a dream nun. I'm the nun of your dreams. Anyway, but I keep throwing ourselves off topic. I say something and I totally forget what we were talking about.
No, just the scene, giving birth and how it was to do that scene.
Yeah, and if you watched it recently or rewatch it, that the room is pretty gruesome. Like that hospital room, they did the sets like you said. So if you didn't like the dark thing, I kind of liked it. It was very, like you said, it was the darkest of them all. Very gothic, very, and I think it kind of makes up, in my opinion, that the sets and the whole tone was so dark because Freddie was becoming, by number 5, he had become much more comedic in his interactions. So kind of, I think if it wasn't dark, the whole thing would have been too funny, like too light. We really wouldn't even barely be horror except for the kills. So I think it needed to be dark because Freddie himself had become so much more, one-liners and funny by this point. So I don't know. I to me, it evens out. And I recently marathon watched through all of them, and I don't know, maybe it's because I'm, it's hard to say. Yes, of course it's because I'm in it, but I love 5. I don't understand the fans that don't like it. I think it's cool. I think the effects are wild. The kills are creative. The characters, there's inconsistencies, absolutely, but there's inconsistencies throughout. They all are. you know. But I really don't get why, you know, some people really poo-poo number 5. But I guess to each his own. I also think
Yeah.
challenge anyone who's watching this and who hasn't seen 5 in a long time. If you saw 5 when you're little or whatever, watch it again, like with new eyes. Just watch it again, because some things when you watch as an adult, you look back and you go, "Oh God, I used to like this. It's crap." But other times you go, "Oh, I thought it was crap, but it's actually pretty good." And I think 5 is one of those that I think you appreciate more when you're older. I do, but I could be wrong. You guys can give feedback to this podcast, and they'll pass their message on to me, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I've been watching the Freddy movies well since I was probably 6 or 7, and I watch them like every year all the time. And my opinion doesn't really change on the movies. um I think 5 is one of my favorites though, just because of it does have a tone shift. You were correct in the fact that the franchise starts to become a little bit too comedy like, and they had to get it back to being dark. And in the zeitgeist of pulp culture, Freddy later, did become this pulp culture icon, and kind of in the comedic side of it. He was also it's one of the only slashers that has a personality, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. Because well, the other two, the other, I mean, even now, even the yeah, everyone's like covered up. Their faces are covered with a mask or a sheet or whatever. He's really, I mean, Chucky you see, but Chucky has personality too. But Freddy, absolutely.
But Chucky also has a comedic personality too.
Yeah, yeah, that twisted sense of humor. Well, because otherwise, what I like that. It just gives it depth. Because otherwise, if it's just somebody who's kind of, whatever, you can watch that for a degree, but after a while, it gets a little,
I think if they didn't give him the comedic personality or personality in general, you would have, if they could all talk, they'd all be like Ghostface. Where Ghostface is very one-dimensional. Granted, now Ghostface is always a different character, but the character in general is just very one-dimensional. But yeah. Okay, so I have some personal questions. Off kind of topic of the movie. So you get to work with Stephen Hopkins. He's one of my favorite directors. If y'all don't know, he directed Lost in Space, the 98 version. He directed Predator 2. So what was it like working with him on set?
Um, it was great. I mean, it was very, very rushed. I will say this, like I probably pretty much everybody to do with Elm Street 5, I didn't get to like really hang out and the way I did with a lot of other films, because usually film sets and TV sets, it's a lot for the actors, performers, it's a lot of sitting around waiting. So you have lots of time to get to know each other and chit chat and talk. And for me, two things. One, as Amanda Kruger, I didn't have any makeup, not even base makeup, which was really bizarre. I mean, I don't know. It's the only time I've ever been in film with not like what stitch. They didn't even put powder on. Like I never entered the makeup room. So, I mean, I guess as a nun, you don't need it, whatever. The only thing they did was in the bursting throw tons of blood on me. But other than that, I had no makeup. So I was never in the makeup or hair trailer. So I wasn't, that's a place where you often get to know each other, you chit chat and stuff. I didn't have that. And then because we were so rushed, because it was always moving from one scene to the next, we didn't, there never was like everyone breaks for lunch. Like there used to be the whole set, everyone breaks for lunch, but they would kind of often do it in shifts. So, our set would break, but then, people would be dashing off to the next set, and the next set of actors would be pulled into that scene. And, so there wasn't as much downtime. The kids, the teens, like the main cast did get to hang out a little bit more between, because they were all in their scenes together. So, the Alice and her friends, um, you know, but with the director, so even so, the same with Stephen Hopkins. Aside from when I was on set working with him, I didn't get to really hang out a lot. But on set, he was good. He was very trusting. He, I think people have heard me say before, it was the one and only time I was cast on the spot. Like they cast me right there. I auditioned and they gave me the part, and that never happens, but it did for this one. And I guess he just liked what I did and he trusted it, and so he kind of went with it. I don't recall him really ever telling me to try it a different way. Like he seemed to, like what I did. So it's always nice when you know that a director trusts you, you know. And I loved his accent. It was fun.
Yes.
You know, I think his mind was always spinning because you could tell that he was very focused on the scene at hand. But the second it would, all the logistics would be, you know, kind of down pat and we're ready to go. You could tell like he would be there for that scene, but you could tell that the wheels were turning. He was already a step ahead because he knew the second he says cut, if it works, he's going to be running to the next set. It really was a crazy experience. I've never before or since been any kind of experience where it was that rushed. Which is another thing I wish that fans would well, they don't need to take into consideration. It has really nothing to do with fans having to deal with the fact that this was so rushed. But as a performer, at least, I want to say, or even for the cast and crew, the fact that the crew that they pulled this together and pulled it off as well as they did, given the low budget and the speed at which we had to do it, I think that in itself was a huge feat. Like if the end result that you see was then result of a regular film where it had a nice big budget like the other Elm Street ones did. Like this was one of the lowest budgeted ones. You can look it up later, Dustin, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Elm Street 5 was the smallest budget they spent. Maybe not. The first, actually, not. That's not true. I mean, the first one they spent very little because it was brand new, but I think they spent more. Certainly by number 3, 3 and 4, I think they spent a lot more, and probably the ones after. But 5 was a low budget. They threw it together, and most certainly it was the shortest production time. And then they also then post production too. It was the quickest. They just turned it around, and it was out before you could even blink your eyes. So and which was really interesting because I had done 2 films. I had starred in the 2 behind me. You can see Matinee and Quarantine. They were all the same year, '89. That was my big year. They were all filmed at the same time, but Quarantine and Matinee, which I filmed, you know, almost 9 months before Elm Street, they came out like 2 years after Elm Street. Elm Street just came out like that, really, really quick. Because I remember at the opening of Quarantine, which was the first one I did in that year, I remember that at the screening, they said, oh, you know, Beatrice Boepple from Nightmare on Elm Street. You know, I already had been out before this one even came out. So you know, I do hope that the harsh critics take into consideration that given this rushed job and this, you know, nobody really exactly knowing what they were doing in terms of the script constantly changing, and it was something that was kind of thrown together like, oh, this is really successful. Robert's willing to do another one. Let's just bang this one out. Given that circumstance, for that, it came out really well. You know, I think the point I was trying to say was if it had a huge budget and it had taken a couple years like most films do in post and pre-production, then maybe you could be more critical going, you know, why was this so sloppy? Why was that, you know, why are this inconsistencies and stuff? But for a thrown together thing, you have to almost think of it almost like a student film. For that, it was pretty damn good, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, they did well. 4 is, I believe, the highest grossing one, and I think with that success, they were just like, we got to pump them out. They got to pump them out, and they did. They pumped these out, and you could because they were made for no money, and they made lots of money, so it worked out for New Line. And as long as Robert wanted to keep doing them, I mean, why not? And
We were doing 5, you know, at the time. He started off at the beginning of filming saying he wasn't going to do anymore. And so the first script I got, at the end, I take him inside me and we go into the room of Hunter Maniacs, and that was the end. I actually killed Freddy Krueger. That was going to be the end of the series, or at least so they said. And then I guess in the middle of filming, they decided, no, that's dumb. You know, he's probably going to make more. So they had me, you know, had his hand come out so that he could come back.
And they do, yeah. He comes back in Final Nightmare, and then again in Wes Craven's New Nightmare, and then Freddy versus Jason, and
I gotta admit, I have not seen that yet. I have not seen Freddy versus Jason. I do have to see that.
It's a different take. It's interesting. I love it personally. You know, speaking of Wes Craven, though, did you get to meet the legend himself?
Unfortunately, I did not. Oh, no, that's not true. I cannot say for 100%, but I'm like 90% sure he was actually at that audition.
Yeah,
Yeah,
what I was going to ask you next is who was all at the auditioning for Amanda?
Stephen Hopkins, of course. Rob Shea
Yep.
um, was. I'm trying to think if uh, what was her name? Oh God, my brain. I think Leslie, who wrote it, Leslie Bopham. Her last name's similar to mine, Buckley, B-O something. Anyway, the writer, I believe she was in the room as well, and the casting director. So there were quite a few people. But I'm almost positive Wes was there. Now remember, this was 34 years ago, so I'm not one. But yeah, but I certainly, it's not like we were never on first name basis. We didn't get to hang out, not at all. It was, it's sad in retrospect. I mean, when I think of what legendary thing this whole franchise is and all of that, it didn't have that, hang out, chill, relax, go out for drinks afterwards kind of thing that we did in other films. Just it was very, very rushed.
So if this was rushed, what was the longest downtime that you can remember?
I mean, certainly. Well, I think because of the schedule, my every time I was there, it was over a couple of weeks, and every time I'd be on set, it was scheduled that my one of my scenes was being filmed, and we would be there for the day doing that, and then when it was done, I pretty much always was released. Like I didn't have to sit around and wait and wait and wait because we wouldn't get to another one of my scenes to another day. So I really didn't have. I mean, I remember the time I got to really hang out the most was, to be honest with you, was the hospital people when I was giving birth. Lisa was there, but I wish I could remember the name of the nun nurse, the other nurse that holds Freddie and gives it to her. And I was just cracking up about, I don't know what. We were laughing and laughing that whole time. We had a lot of fun, and the guy who played the doctor. I've never seen those guys at conventions, and it's funny. Some of the people I see at conventions signing autographs who in other franchises like had such tiny little parts, like just about a walk on, and still people they go, still come to conventions. So I'm wondering why those guys are never at conventions, because I don't know.
I've actually been to conventions where they'll have like the zombies from Walking Dead. Like it's somebody who was a zombie for one shoot, and they'll have a table set up. So it's
if he wants to meet you, then that's fine. It's fun. Whatever. I don't harp on it too much because I've done many interviews and talked about it. But honestly, until like I had no clue about conventions. I didn't know they even were happening. I had, because Elm Street was basically the end of my career. Not because of Elm Street, but the bulk of my career was everything, the 10 years before doing Nightmare on Elm Street. That's when I was, with Johnny Depp in 21 Jump Street, Emilio Estevez in Stakeout, and these films, and, all kinds of TV stuff. And, but by the time I had done Elm Street, after doing Elm Street, that's when I left my career and went to India. So I really was completely out of the loop for years and years and years. I didn't know anything about how famous the franchise was. I didn't know that it was continuing on, that people were going to conventions to meet the actors. I didn't know any of that. What got me back into it was Never Sleep Again, when they were doing that documentary, and they went out of their way hunting us all down, and found pretty much everybody that had ever been in it. And Toy Newkirk, so she's in 3, right? 3 and 4, or 3?
I think she's in 3 and 4 off the top of my head.
She was also in New York, so she was filming, before me. She was the one that told me about these conventions. I had no idea that they even existed. So, but it's been so much fun now that I have time to really devote to it and devote to my fans. I've just learned so much more about, the industry, and I mean about the genre of horror, and especially about Elm Street. And I've become quite a fan myself, as you can tell.
Yeah.
Right?
It's so cool.
My hands are shaky, aren't they? Anyway, coffee, I think, this morning. Anyway, yeah. So what else do you want to ask me about?
I do have one final question for you before we wrap up this episode. Robert Shea, the founder and the man of New Line, Freddy Krueger was his baby. This was the movie that basically grew his studio. So my question is, how was he always on set? How involved was he with the fifth movie?
With number 5, he definitely was around. He was in and out, because he would be. I would see him and Stephen, constantly having animated conversations, as well as with the writers, because they were, that was a daily thing. These two writers were coming up with new pages on a daily basis, and so Robert was totally coming. He had to come on set and discuss and approve and this, that, and the other. So yeah, he was around. He was quite involved. And New Line Cinema, actually, a stakeout that I did with Richard Dreyfuss and Emilio Estevez, that was New Line Cinema. Also, my part was pretty much cut out to being just. I did originally have dialogue, but then that got cut out. But I got to play an undercover cop. This is my agent calling in the middle of my. Look at this. All drama. Anyway, so what was the Shoot to Kill? That also was New Line Cinema. So I did a lot of things with New Line Cinema, to be honest with you. Yeah. New Line Cinema and Disney seem to be the two houses that I did the most of my work with.
And now in the industry, you want to work with Disney. That's like the studio that everybody is like just wishing to get the call from. So
yeah. And Warner Brothers, of course, then took over New Line.
Yep, they sure did. Well, y'all, that's today's episode of Killer Content. Thank you, Beatrice, for being on. Those are so cool. I love the heck out of those. Y'all hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell so you don't miss a single episode, and we will see y'all in the next episode of Killer Content.